The English language is absolutely full of chickens because chickens have been living alongside humans for at least 8,000 years. And for most of that time, pretty much everyone, everywhere, had chickens. And when you live that closely with a creature for that long, they get into your language. And not just a word here and there, chickens pop up in a whole bunch of our sayings and analogies. And I bet that most people using these phrases have absolutely no idea where they came from. Today, we're gonna fix that. In 1904, a 10-year-old Norwegian boy named Thorleif, and I'm not gonna be able to say this last name because I'm not Norwegian, Skillerup Ebb. Okay, I'm sure that was terrible, but we'll put it on the screen so you actually know what I was trying to say. Anyway, he was put in charge of his family's chickens. And instead of just feeding them and going off to his next chore, he started watching them. He took notes, he kept journals, because he noticed something that nobody had bothered to write down before, that chickens always knew exactly who was above them and who was below them. They knew who got to eat first, who got the best perch, who could peck whom without consequence. He kept watching these chickens for years. He turned those childhood observations into a PhD dissertation in 1921. He called it Hackordnung, which is a German word that I probably also said wrong, but it means pecking order. The English term appeared in 1927. Within a few decades, scientists were applying the concept to wolves, fish, primates, and corporate organization charts. Konrad Lorenz, who eventually won a Nobel Prize for his work on animal behavior, cited Thorleif Skillerup Ebb as a foundational influence on his entire career. All of that from a 10-year-old and his chickens. Next up, we have the term brooding. When someone says a person is brooding, sitting in dark silence, turning something over and over in their mind, they're reaching, without knowing it, all the way back to the hen house. Brood comes from Old English brod, the hatchlings themselves, the young birds in the nest. The verb to brood meant to sit on eggs, applying body heat, completely still, waiting for something to hatch. The root goes back even further to a Proto-Germanic word for warmth and heat. At some point, I guess someone noticed the resemblance. A hen on a nest is completely withdrawn, fixed on just one thing, generating heat that doesn't go anywhere visible, waiting for something to resolve, which are her chicks hatching. Now, I keep chickens that go broody a lot, like way too much. And I will tell you that if you've ever had to deal with a broody hen, that description is very, very accurate. There is an intensity to it. They are not available. They are somewhere else entirely. The figurative meaning is first recorded from the mid-1400s. The specific pensive, staring into the middle distance sense turns up in writing from around 1870. But anyone who has tried to reach under a broody hen to collect an egg could have told you about that energy much, much earlier. This is a fun one, and I think we should bring this phrase back. Good egg, or you're a good egg, meaning that you're a decent, reliable, trustworthy person. This one starts from a very practical problem. You can't tell from the outside if an egg is good or if it's gone rotten. The shell doesn't give anything away. The only way to find out is to crack it. Old cookbooks advised always cracking eggs into a separate bowl first, precisely because one bad egg could ruin everything else in the mix. That's still pretty good advice today, and something I do if I'm a little skeptical of a particular egg. So a bad egg became a natural metaphor for a person who seems fine from the outside but turns out to be rotten, untrustworthy, dishonest, not what they appeared to be. That phrase appears in print from 1855. Good egg came later, in the early 1900s, as the cheerful opposite. Someone who, when it comes down to it, is exactly what they appear to be. Solid, all the way through. Here's another term that has a kind of interesting backstory. Cockpit. You're flying in a commercial aircraft at 35,000 feet. You're hurtling through the sky in a metal tube, and the place where the pilots sit is named after a pit where roosters fought. Cockfighting was enormous in England from the medieval period right through to the 19th century. The arenas were small, sunken, enclosed spaces, pits, designed to keep the birds contained and the action visible. By the late 1500s, cockpit was already being used to describe any cramped space where intense, chaotic activity happened. Shakespeare used it in Henry V to mean the arena around the stage of a theatre. Then, a London theatre called the Cockpit, built on the actual site of a former cockfighting arena, was torn down in 1635 and replaced with cabinet offices for King Charles I. Local people kept calling the new buildings the Cockpit. That name stuck, and the phrase started drifting towards meaning a centre of control. Meanwhile, the Royal Navy picked it up for the area below decks where surgeons treated the wounded during battle. Cramped, chaotic, high stakes, that's the cockpit too. Then along came the early pilots of World War I in their tiny, open, extremely dangerous planes, looking for a word for the space where they sat. Cockpit. Obviously. Chickens come home to roost. This one is old. The idea that bad deeds eventually return to their source goes back to Roman writers. Virgil has a version, Chaucer used it in the 1380s, writing about curses that return to the one who cast them, like birds returning to their own nests. But chickens didn't specifically arise in the phrase until 1810, when the English poet Robert Southey used it as the motto for his poem, The Curse of Kehama. Curses are like young chickens. They always come home to roost. The curses part dropped out over time. Now it's just the chickens, reliable, inevitable, heading home at dusk the way they always do. And if you keep chickens, you know exactly that feeling, that end of the day moment when they all just file in. There's something very satisfying about it. Less satisfying when it's a metaphor for your own past decisions catching up with you, but still accurate. Nest egg. Your retirement savings, your rainy day fund, the money you're putting aside for later. The literal nest egg is a real thing, and some of you will have used one. It's a ceramic or a wooden egg, I've got one right here, placed in a nest to encourage a hen to lay there and to keep laying there. The practice goes back to at least the 14th century. I use them. They work by making hens think that other hens have laid in that nest spot, so she should too. By 1686, people were using the term to mean money set aside for later. The logic runs two ways. A small thing carefully placed leads to more over time, and a nest is somewhere safe, somewhere things are protected until they're needed. And us chicken keepers still use that actual real nest egg. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. This one traces back to Aesop, specifically a fable about a milkmaid who daydreams about everything she'll buy with the cream from her pail, then trips and spills the lot. No chickens in the original fable, but the moral was too good to leave alone, and by the 1570s, chickens had arrived in the English version of the saying. And if you've ever hatched chicks, you'll know exactly what it's getting at. There is just no way to know how many eggs are going to hatch into chicks until hatch day arrives. It's one of the oldest pieces of general financial advice in the English language. Rule the roost. To be the one in charge. The roost is where chickens sleep, and the top bird in a flock claims the best spot on the perch. Walk into any coop at night and you can read the entire social hierarchy just in where everyone has chosen or been allowed to sit. In my flock, the hens argue about who gets to sleep beside the rooster and who has to sleep on the edges of the roost instead of in the middle. There is a theory this was originally rule the roast, as in the person who carves the meat is the head of the household. That version does exist in old texts, but the chicken version has thoroughly won out. English language is so full of chicken words and phrases that I can't possibly cover all of them in just one video. There are ones I couldn't get to, like henpecked, fox in the hen house, no spring chicken, something to crow about. But I would love to hear your favorite chicken-related phrases that I haven't covered here or that I have. And if you have phrases from other languages, I would absolutely love to hear about those too.